What's up, everybody? It's Nicole. Welcome back to my channel, Real Talk Recovery, where we talk about recovery from addiction and I share my life with you. Tonight, we have a special guest. Her name is Kayla, and she's going to come on and share her story with us, you guys. I don't get a lot of ladies on the channel, and I want to work on making sure I do an equal amount of both, but it's hard because more guys reach out to me than girls. Right now, I'm going to link Kayla's channel in the comment section so you guys can go subscribe to her channel. It is called Street Life to Housewife, and let me get that linked real fast. All right. Okay, there we go. I got Kayla's channel. Hey, Mark. So that is her channel. So you guys go subscribe to her channel and show her some love and support. She just started her channel up. So I know it would be so awesome to have all you guys go over there and subscribe. So that way she will have people to make videos and tell her, make more videos for her. So I think me and her's story is we have a lot in common. So it's going to be a good one. So welcome, Mark, welcome, Kim. What's up, you guys? I'm so glad you guys are here. I love seeing y'all coming in and supporting the channel. Mark, I saw that you're inviting people over to the channel. Man, thank you so much. Hey, Misty. Misty says, I'm so excited. I saw her and her husband's interview on the compound. Yes, on Lockdown 23-in-1. Hey, Carly. So I'm excited too, you guys. This weekend has kind of been an off weekend for me. And so she just hit me up on Instagram and was like, hey, you want to do it? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. I'm always down to have people on the channel to talk about addiction and recovery, because that's what we're trying to do over here is help people to understand the disease of addiction, and also to help inspire people who are struggling, or inspire people who are getting sober and inspire them to stay sober and keep their lives straight. The easy thing to do, you guys, is to stay getting high. The hard thing to do is to get sober and do the right thing, especially when you practice getting high for so long. It's difficult making that transition, but once you make the transition, your life will be so much better. Hey, Jay. I'll wrangle up tons of people and get them over here. Merk, I'm telling you what, you're going to be my right-hand man. I really, really appreciate you, man. It means so much to me. It really, really does. And I talk about that a lot, how loyalty means a lot to me. So I'm seeing that you guys, we have a lot in common. That loyalty is super important to me. So let me show you. There you go, Merk. Okay. Hey, girl, I'm so glad I caught your live once again. Hey, Noah, what's up, girl? I'm glad you caught me too. Tonight we're having a guest on. Her name is Kayla. And so she's going to come on and we're going to chop it up and talk about her addiction. We're going to talk about her life. We're going to talk about what it was like for her to get sober. We're going to talk about the struggles that she went through, and we're going to talk about what she's doing today to stay sober. More of us girls have to start speaking out and sharing our testimonies, because I think it's too common that women are shamed because, we're supposed to be moms, and it's almost like people look down on us if we, had mistakes back in the past. That's not how it is over here. We want to support those women and lift them up. Are you really food for thought? What's up, girl? Hey, Captain. Hey, Tony. These really help me keep in perspective. Me too, girl. Me too. Hey, Krista. What's up? I saw your comment on my other video. You want to hear my story, Jay? I have a whole 4-part series on my channel. When you first come to my channel, there is a video and it says my downward spiral into addiction. And if you watch that first video, there's 3 other videos that come after it, and it's 4 hours long, but that is my whole story. Now listen, there's some parts that I left out, right? But it's up there. Hey, Kayla, you're the girl I've been talking to on Instagram. Huh? I saw your story today that you sent me about the tattoo on the girl's kitty cat. I laughed out loud, girl, when I read that. Oh yeah, we tell some story times over here, don't we, Kim? Hey Monica, what's up, girl? All right, y'all are all coming in. That makes me so excited. Okay, don't leave. Stay here. Kayla's coming and she's going to tell her story. It's going to be good. So don't leave. This is going to be one that y'all are not going to want to miss. She had a crazy life like I did. She did some crazy stuff in her addiction. So, I mean, if you watched her interview on lockdown, then you know what I'm talking about. Thanks, Captain. So how's everybody doing on your sobriety? Is everybody staying on the straight and narrow, or is anybody struggling? I took Nate to go see that movie with John Cena in it, the one, the fire movie. It's like playing with fire, and it was so sad, y'all. I cried. I mean, it was sad in a good way, like it was a happy, sad show. And it actually, so the kids, okay, I'm going to give it away. So if y'all don't want to know. Oh, Monica, we're here for you, girl. You're all right. It's going to be okay. You know, a lot of the times I think when we're struggling, it's like we think that we can't get sober. You know, we think that it's not something that we can achieve. And I used to think the same way. I used to think, how do these people do it? I'm never going to be able to get sober. And it seemed like such a far away thing for me, you know? Hell yeah, Merc. It seemed like something that was so unobtainable for me, but I'm telling you, it's so obtainable. It just takes change in your life, you guys. You know, I know that sometimes I beat you guys over the head with things that I'm telling you that you need to do to make these changes, but it's just because I know that it'll help you. You know, a lot of the times I wasn't willing to make those changes, and so that's why I stayed struggling for so long, because I wasn't willing to go to meetings. I wasn't willing to get a sponsor. I wasn't willing to work the 12 steps. I wasn't willing to go into treatment. You know what I mean? My cousin has some crazy stories. She was front page on our local paper. Girl runs over Home Depot security trying to get away driver after robbery. Oh my God. Listen, I got a story. Me and my husband, I call it our Bonnie and Clyde story. We were trying to get a hotel room at this nasty ass hotel called the Ritz, right? Nasty, like just hotel, motel, like those, you know, those kind. And so the guy at the front desk would not rent us a room, and he ended up telling us that we had to leave, and if we didn't leave, and he pulled out a weapon. He had it sat on the counter. Well, at this time, my husband always had this little black, well, it wasn't little, it was about that big, Glock handgun underneath the passenger seat of his, right at the time we were driving a Nissan Xterra, big silver Nissan Xterra. And you guys, I was so messed up on Klonopin and Xanax. I was out of my mind. And when I was on Xanax and Klonopin, I thought that nobody could touch me. I was untouchable, okay? So I said, hold on a second. And I ran out there to that car and I grabbed that gun and I walked in and I was waving it around. You motherfucker, you're not going to rent us a room. You know what I'm saying? And this dude he was calling 911 on us. He said, get the hell out of here. And so we ran out and I ripped my shirt off, tied it around the license plate, jumped in the passenger side car, and we all the way out of there, never came back. And then we went and got us this bomb ass hotel room by the airport that was like so nice, and they were serving like a fucking 5-star dinner, dude. But y'all, it was crazy. Oh gosh. Okay, dun 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 dun. Here she comes.
Can you see me?
Hey, girl. I can see you.
Okay. I got like this
to my channel.
stand.
Thank you so much.
So I'm trying to figure it out really quick. All right. That'll work.
You look so pretty. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. That was a
so
quick glam for me. Just a real quick glam. Everywhere.
You look fine, girl. Okay, so here's the deal. I told everybody about your YouTube channel and I told them to go over and subscribe. I linked it in the live chat because we have people in the live chat right now. And then after we upload the video, I will link it in the comment section and the description box. And you could shout your channel out at the end. Shoot, you can shout it out now. I got my moderators linking it in the chat. Thanks, girls. And so what I want you to do is I just want you to share with us what it was like before you got into your addiction. Like, what was your child life like? What it was like when you got into your addiction, and then what your life is like now. And you can go as in depth as you want to, as much as you think you can fit into about 1 hour.
Okay.
Got
it? Yeah. So my childhood actually was great. My mom and dad were both in the home. My mom is a teacher. My dad, childhood was really, overall was great. I had like this almost identity crisis in my life because when I was growing up, I had my mom and dad. And when I started getting a little bit older, I realized I look different than them. My skin is darker than theirs. My hair is curly and black, and it started getting kind of confusing for me because, those were my mom and dad. They both they're white, So eventually I found out from my parents, eventually I found out that my dad, who I called my dad, was not my biological dad. And I remember that being a huge, because honestly, when I was a child, I was a daddy's girl, that I was more, I don't want to say more attached to him, but, we kind of bonded more. My mom, I looked at as, my dad was just a lot of fun, basically. So when I realized he wasn't my biological dad, it gave me a lot of confusion as a child. And I began wanting to know and being curious as to who was this other man, who was this guy who was my biological dad. And it was a confusing time in my childhood. And, I remember asking and asking and asking, and my mom just kind of would give me these vague answers of, I just wanted to know his name and see a picture. And it took a long time. It took till I was like 17 for me to get that. And so I remember being a really good kid when I was in like elementary years. And then once that started, I started really becoming like really defiant and just, acting out in my own ways. But, with my mom being a teacher, I was always taught that education is very important. So I tried my best to do good in school, and I did well in school, but it was everything after school that really kind of took me down the wrong path.
Yeah.
So
I was the same way when I was growing up. And when you said that your skin was darker, your hair was curly. My mom's Mexican and my dad's Italian, but it was like when I would go to school, I went to the school that was real small. Everybody was white, and I was one of the only brown girls in the school. It was like me and 2 other girls that were brown. And so I always struggled because I didn't feel like I was like everybody else. So you saying that and it being your family, like I can really understand why you didn't feel like you were like your family. Like they were your parents, but you weren't. I totally understand because when we were little, my sister was really light, and we would tease her and tell her she was adopted all the time. So I totally understand.
Yeah, and I was an only child until I was about 10 years old. And then when my brother and sister were born, they have blonde hair and blue eyes. And I almost then, it really set it. At first, it was kind of like I knew it, but once I saw our family together, and I felt like I just stood out, and I remember being so mad at my mom for a really long time, and I'm blessed that I have the relationship I have with my mom, but I feel like I held on to that for a really long time when in all reality, now that I'm a mom, I see being a mom is not easy. She did the best she could. She was 17 when she had me. She she did the best she could, and she did a good job. But I thought that, you know, as a child, you think your parents should be doing all of this, but then once you get to that point and you're a parent, you're like, wait a minute, they did great. They did wonderful.
Yeah.
So
So in high school, so you were cool in your like grade school, but did you start acting out like high school, like after you turned like 17? Because that's how I was.
well, I was younger than that. I started smoking weed when I was 12, drinking. I remember too vividly the first time I drank alcohol. And like, you know, when you get older and you start reflecting on all of this, I realized at that moment I was an addict because the friend I was drinking with, we were at my parents' house. My parents had gone to bed, and I knew my parents' liquor was up in the cabinet, and I said, "Let's drink this peach Stoli that my parents have, and we'll just fill it back up with water, you know." You know. So we drank. We took shots, and we took like 2 shots, and she passed out, and I was like, "Oh, well, that's great. I'll take the whole bottle myself then." And I stayed up drinking all by myself, filled it back up with water. And, you know, and she went on a whole different path in life. That girl, she went on a whole different path in life. And I went opposite, you know. And it's like, I know at that moment, it was like, why would I stop? It's not like it tastes that great, but it's making me feel the way I like to feel. And that's not feeling anything, you know. I don't want to feel any of these feelings that I have inside. So let me take something that's going to get rid of all of it, you know. So I started drinking then, and the minute I started drinking, it became, I mean, that poor liquor cabinet, you know, my parents figured it out years later. It was all water up there because I drank all of it. I mean, I remember filling whiskey back up with water, and I was like, oh, that doesn't look very good. Let me get some like Coca-Cola. I'm making concoctions for them. And, you know, I'm pretty sure my mom told me later on they had like a Christmas party or something and pulled all that liquor out, and it was water. And my mom knew then that was not what it was. So, but yeah, I started drinking then at 12 and smoking weed, you know, and I found myself with friends. You know, my parents had a lot of rules at my house. My dad was in the Marine Corps, so he was very structured, and he was a lot of fun, but it wasn't like there was a lot of rules at my house. So I found myself finding friends whose parents didn't have rules, who then would lie to my parents for me. And so, yeah, it was weed and alcohol at 12. I started doing cocaine at 14. And then right turning into 15 is when I smoked crack. And it was like, you know, you do cocaine I was doing cocaine with people who were in their 20s, and they were smoking it, and I was only snorting it because I would never smoke crack. And then it was like one day the guy was like, I don't have any powder. All I have is this crack. And I didn't even hesitate. I was like, well, if that's the only thing, I'm doing it. You know, I'm not going to sit here all night while you guys get high. I'm going to get high too. So yeah, I started, and then that switched over. And right in that year, those years, 15, it was like 14, 15, 16 was when everything went downhill for me. So I was doing opiates. That was back in the Oxy 80 days. I had the 80s, and I was about 15, and I started smoking those. And then, you know, I again was hanging out with older people and it wasn't just older people, it was older men, you know, because they gave me, just like drugs, they gave me the feelings that I liked. You know, I didn't want to be around a bunch of women because they didn't make me feel good about myself. These men did.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was smoking the pills, and then shortly after that I was shooting them. So it was a very, very quick progression for me. And, you know, once I started shooting, I never went back, you know. And
the fact that you talk about like how you would have the men around you and that, you know, they made you feel good. And also like I can relate to that because a lot of the times they would like have money and they weren't messed up about giving me the money. It's like
No,
I could have them around my little finger. You know what I
right.
mean? And a
Yep.
lot of people, I don't think guys can understand that because they don't go through that. But I
No,
know that's why I was telling all the girls, I was like, we have a chick that's coming on that she's not embarrassed to talk about what she's been through. She's
no.
just like me, and she's going to tell y'all because so many of the girls I know, some of them are saying right now, I can so relate. I can so relate. You know what I mean? So, okay, so keep on going. I'm listening.
Well, yeah. So, in a crucial part for me too, that to be able to reflect and look back is that I continually put myself in these positions, and then was upset about the results I was getting, but they were the same results every time, and it was like, So, anyways, I was 17, and I decided it was at that time I had a boyfriend who was in his 20s, and he had a house, so I packed up all my stuff and left and moved to his house with him, and I was pregnant shortly after that, and I ended up so I stayed sober my entire pregnancy. Well, sober, what we would call sober. I was still smoking weed though.
Yeah.
Um, and um, I had my baby at that time, and it was almost like I had this built up resentment because of my pregnancy. He was using the whole time. And so I felt like I just went 9 months and
Yes.
you've been using this whole time, so now it's my turn, right? So, and at first I was breastfeeding, and that was very important to me. I felt like that was where I was getting my bond with my child, and my addiction eventually, it like knocked every night. It was like something starts turning, and eventually I gave in, and I decided I was going to get high, and I left the baby with him. I went out and got high. I came back, and and then I had to stop breastfeeding because
Mhm.
I had to stop breastfeeding, and it almost to me cut my bond off with my child. Sat like, and it took a while for me to be able to admit this. Nobody wants to say that, but I had a hard time after I quit breastfeeding. I felt so guilty for, I just felt guilty. Like I just chose to use instead of do this with my child. And it made me feel so worthless and not worthy of this baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, once it starts for me. There's no, I'm just going to do it one time. There's no just for the weekend. I've tried it all before. It just goes full blown every time. So once I used that one time, I couldn't stop. My child's father, gave me the ultimatum. If you do it again, we're done. You need to leave. And I did it again. And I left. And I ended up like a month later getting in my car from Washington State, driving all the way to Florida to get sober.
Mhm.
And, you know, I'll give a fast forward. I didn't end up seeing my baby again for almost 9 years from that moment. So, and I almost just I closed it off. And I was talking to my mom about this recently that, I have to rebuild that bond because for so long I just closed that off and just tried to forget. But I started this new journey on all of this guilt and just worthlessness, and then I started a whole new path, and from then on I just continued to do this cycle of, I went to Florida. I got in a bunch of craziness down there. I went to jail, and then I drove home, and my mom convinced me to go to treatment. I went to a 21-day treatment, which I barely woke up after the 21st day, you know. It was
Yeah.
just that was not what I needed. But in those days, I had never been to treatment before. So I thought, okay, I'll just go to treatment. And, you know, I continued to battle and battle and battle with this. And my grandma would let me come live with her. And then I would go back. I had this boyfriend at the time who he was, he was not, I mean, I wish him the best in life, but he was just somebody who would put me in these positions. It was almost like I was he was with me because I had value. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So
I
he
know
would,
what you mean.
yeah, so he would send me off with these dealers and, you know, and expect me to come back. But, you know, I'm doing what I need to do to get this. And it just was a messed up situation. And I was so naive at that time to what was going on. I didn't realize the dynamic that, you know, I mean,
He was
technically,
taking
really,
advantage of you and using
totally,
you to get him free drugs,
totally.
basically.
And I was so naive at that time that it was love, you know, it was, oh my gosh, he understands me and we're in this addiction together and I can't leave him hanging and, you know, all of that. So it took a while. I was with him for quite a while. And that's how I ended up meeting Eric, who I'm with now, who, you know, we have 2 kids together now because Eric and him were friends. And actually, I remember Eric telling me one day, he pulled me aside, he said, Kayla, do, do you realize that he offered, or he asked me if I wanted to sleep with you for some money? And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, he's basically pimping you out, Kayla. And I was like, and Eric was like, come on, get your stuff, we'll figure it out. And we were best friends. I used to call him my brother, you know.
Yeah.
And we were brother and sister for a couple of years after that. I remember leaving that situation and going with him because, you know, I had to have a man in my life. It wasn't like I could just leave a situation myself. It was, you know, it was a continual jump for me.
Yeah.
If I'm, you know, which is not the most appealing thing to talk about, but I mean, that's just the reality.
I
Like,
was the same way. Like I would go from guy to guy to guy because I didn't want to be alone because if I was alone, then I had to be alone with myself and my
yep,
mind. So
yep,
I always had somebody around to keep me occupied, to keep me distracted from the
right,
terrible, shitty life I was living.
yeah. And it was easy for guys to disguise the reality of the situation. You know, you think if a man, oh, well, he likes me, he wants to be with me, there's got to be something good going on with me.
Right.
And you know, it took honestly that move though from going from that guy to Eric, who, you know, I always wanted something to be more with Eric, but we were just friends, you know, and he was adamant. And I remember um, him telling me, and we're in our addiction, you know, and him telling me that, you know what, Kayla, I don't need to sleep with you to show you that I love you, you know. And this was fast forward. And I was just like, I was just confused and like, well, if he doesn't want to sleep with me, he doesn't like me.
Right.
And he
Right.
kept telling me, Kayla, you have more value than that. You don't have, it doesn't work like that. And there were so many things that he showed me and taught me that just made me look at things a lot differently. And I'm also not saying that we also had a great, healthy relationship at all times. We definitely didn't. We had a lot of craziness that went on, domestic violence and just a lot, you know. But you know, when you're on, I don't want to make excuses, but it also was a two-way street. I mean, I know we can always say men shouldn't put their hands on women, but and I don't excuse anything, and I'm sure he didn't excuse anything either. But we both came pretty far. So anyways, if I jump back into where I was at about when I left with him, life really changed for me because, and not all in the best ways, because the guy I was with before had parents who we could stay with. We always had we always, unless we wanted to leave for a week or two, we could always go back there.
Right.
But when I went with Eric, we didn't have anything but each other. Nothing. So we, we did the best we could. All we had really was our hustle, which our hustle was pretty good, but a roof over your head is really, and I remember I used to try and convince Eric and tell him, let's just go buy a hotel with this. And he used to say, no, let's just keep walking because that hotel is only going to last for 12 hours and we need this money for drugs. And we would just keep walking, and we spent a lot of time outside, homeless, running the streets, going back and forth, couch surfing. And
what was it like? Well, where would y'all sleep at night? Well, what was it like?
There was quite a few times that I would go in the store and steal a tent, and we would, we found a place behind the Jack in the Box. It was like this empty field, but it had sticker bushes all around it. So it was almost like our little gated community. And we put our tents up there, and then we went and told all of our homeless friends, hey, we got a field. You guys, if you want to come stay with us, you can pay us, and we'll give you a little slot, And golly, by the time we were done doing that, we had like 30 tents in that. It was literally our gated community. And then they came and, bulldozed it one day. But we stayed in tents quite a few times. We didn't sleep was the thing. So if we did sleep, it would be like, the reason we set up that tent was because we had an opportunity with a dealer that we knew that Eric could work for him. Mm-hmm. So we kind of set up shop right there. That was our reason for it. And but I would say for a good 2 years, we spent homeless. We spent just wandering and couch surfing and doing that. And, there was a time that I got tired of struggling like that. And I remember we got into a fight, and Eric had convinced me that I didn't need to do anything with men to survive. We could survive without me doing that. And, it was hard because, I know I can survive this way, and you don't want me to do that. And I get that, and I respect that. But my addiction is telling me that I need something now, and eventually we got into an argument, and I said, I'm leaving. And I remember I went and met up with this girl I knew, and we went out, and we ended up making a lot of money that night. And I came and I brought it back to him, and I said, hey, look, I made this. It was like $800. I said, look, I made this $800. I really want you to come back with me. I don't want to do this alone. Please, let's just do this until we figure out something different. He was upset. He was like, Kayla, I don't want to do it. I don't want you to do it. But we have this addiction. And he came with me. And he put his feelings aside. And by this time, we were not brother and sister anymore. We were in love. And so we went out there and everything. I got a hotel room. We were staying at a decent hotel, and all we ate was their continental breakfast. That's the only food we ate. And I would go out every day, and I would try my best to, like I had explained on the other interview, I would try my best to not do things with these men. But I would do my best at not. But back in those days, we hadn't really perfected this hustle that we eventually got to, which was where I wouldn't do anything with these men, and we were just, robbing men, which came with a whole new level of danger. But either way, I was doing that for about a month. I was, and we were able to survive pretty well out there. But a situation happened, and I didn't come back for it was almost 24 hours that I was um, held up in this guy's house. I didn't know how to get out of there.
What do you
He,
mean held up? Like he kept
like,
you hostage?
yeah, he locked me into his house. He did a whole bunch of craziness to me. I came back bruised and beat up, and it was just a dangerous. I had, if
You
I'm
were
being honest,
you were going to be in a serial killer's house. He was going to keep you there and
he
probably
was
kill
trying
you.
to. He was totally trying to. And if I'm being honest, I know with YouTube we can't say certain words, but the word starts with an R and ends with an A. So that's
Uh-huh.
happened to me before, and I became numb to it.
Yeah.
It I don't want to say it wasn't a big deal because I didn't forget anything, but I was very easily able to just
Just
shut it
block
out.
it out.
Yeah.
Yes. I had the
And
same thing happen to me. I was RAPE'd
right.
also, and after that happened, it was like it's such a traumatic event that it's
So
almost like I could shut down and just
yeah.
go into I got to do what I got to do mode.
Right. Exactly. And I had that. I mean, that's a reoccurring theme in my addiction, and it wasn't always, you know, what's the word? I was hurt quite a few times. Like it wasn't just a little deal, There was a couple times there were multiple people involved. A couple times was, anyways. It was just a reoccurring theme. So I remember going out one day, normal day. I got picked up. The guy asked if I could go back to his house, which sometimes I would do, sometimes I wouldn't do, but I hadn't made any money that day,
You were
and
desperate.
it was desperate. And so I let my guard down. And I remember even having a weird feeling about this guy. But there's nothing that's going to stop me to get the money I need to get high. And I also have Eric waiting for me at home. And so I ended up going to his house. And I remember going to his house and I was thinking, gosh, he lives way out here in the middle of nowhere. He's going down these windy roads. It didn't feel right, but I continued to go. I should have hopped out. I should have hopped down. I should have hopped out. And I remember I got there, and when we went in, it was like he had to do a code to go in. And then we went up some stairs and he had to do another code. But when we got inside, he locked the door. And I kept thinking, this is strange. Something is weird. This is strange. And it was. I was right. Immediately I knew this. Okay, Kayla, you need to survive. You need to get out of this. You need to just do whatever this guy needs you to do because he's not playing, So I remember just trying, pleading, like, okay, what else do you need from me? Can you please let me go? And eventually it was the strangest thing. He had a face of a monster, and then all of a sudden it just went back to normal. And he was like, okay, sweetie, where do you want me to drop you off? And I'm like, this has been like 20 hours now.
Wow.
What do you mean? So anyways, I let him drop me off, and I remember going back up to the hotel room, and Eric was like, open the door quick, like, what is going on? And it was then that Eric was like, look, Kayla, we don't need to be doing this. We do not need to be doing this. Let's go back. Let's figure it out. And and I argued and was like, I'll be all right. When it's too good to be true, sometimes it's too good to be true. It was such easy money for me that I was like, I don't want to go back, because we were, there's two main cities in Washington, Seattle and Tacoma, and we're from Tacoma, but we're up in Seattle. And I'm like, I don't want to go back to Tacoma because Tacoma is such a struggle. But we ended up going back, and I think shortly after that is when I found out I was pregnant. And we had all these great plans of that we were going to get our lives together and everything was going to be all right. And Eric ended up going to prison right after that. I was like 12 weeks pregnant, and he went to prison. And I ended up going to a treatment center for they have a treatment center here in Washington for pregnant women. And I went to that treatment center, and I did good. I stayed sober. I went there when I was like 24 weeks, and I stayed sober the rest of my pregnancy, but I was on methadone, and I ended up going to like a treatment. I mean, not treatment. A clean and sober house is what it was, and staying there and going to the methadone clinic every day. But another thing that a behavior I picked up in addiction was stealing, was like shoplifting.
Yeah.
And I could not stop stealing. Couldn't stop
totally
stealing.
do it. It's like stuff would just stick to my hand. I'd walk
Every
in the Walmart
time.
and it's like, I know what you mean. I was the same way. It was like a compulsion.
Yeah, and I almost felt like, and I'm also, by the way, I'm also diagnosed bipolar. So I would have these like days where I wouldn't want to leave the house and I would just want to cuddle with my baby, and then I would have these other days where I'd be like, I need to go to this store, I need to go to this store, this store, this store, and it ended up becoming like a huge part of my addiction. Like, okay, I got sober, but can I stop stealing? And that's really the question. So I stayed sober, but eventually, here it goes, the reoccurring theme, I started smoking weed again, right? And then once I started smoking weed, I'm like, oh, well, I think I can maybe smoke meth. Let me smoke meth, because I'm not going to shoot anymore, because that's what made it bad for me last time. So I'm just going to smoke, but I only smoke like one day, and then I'm shooting again. So I'm going to the methadone clinic and shooting meth, but still thinking I'm sober. And eventually, because I wasn't on heroin anymore, so I'm sober still, right?
Right.
And Eric ended up getting out of prison, and I had been using, but I hadn't told him that I had been using. So he thought he was getting out and I was sober. And I remember being so high when I went to pick him up, because I was so nervous. I had all this anxiety, and I kept, let me get rid of my anxiety by doing a shot of meth.
Right.
Girl, so
we will
eventually
justify and rationalize
all of it
with so many. I cannot tell you how many times, like, I did the same thing. Like, I would make these excuses or these rationalizations in my mind of why it was okay. And just like you, I was the same way. Okay, if I smoked, then I was going to go get cocaine, or I was going to go get meth, or I was going to go get Roxy's. And it was like, it was like I would move from one drug to the next drug to the next drug. And sometimes I would do them all at one time, but it was always some kind of reason why I was going and doing it. So I totally understand. I was the same way.
Yeah, and it's when you get to the point where I started reflecting and realizing, like, there's really, no matter what, it doesn't matter what happens in life, getting high is not going to fix it.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how little or what substance or anything. It doesn't matter, because it all leads back to the same for me. And it's just, sometimes you just have to feel the feelings and know that you can get through the feeling, whatever the feeling is, happy, sad, mad, whatever it is, using is not going to make it any better. It's not, so, let me see, where was I at?
You went to go pick him up from prison.
Oh, yes. So I ended up going to pick him up, and he, of course, he knew right away.
Yeah.
And he's an addict himself. So he was like, well, where's it at? You're sharing with me, and so all these plans we had went out the window, right? So then we were using again, full blown, but we had a baby. So I remember my grandma asking me to stay, please don't move out, but she wouldn't let Eric move in with us. So I, wanted to be with him. So I took our baby, and we got a little studio apartment, because I don't remember how we got it for the first month, but somebody paid the first month for us. And then we ended up keeping it from there. We ended, eventually we got kicked out. We moved into a hotel. And, you know, long story short, my mom ended up coming one day. Eric had gone to jail for a DOC violation, so it was like a 5-day sentence he had to do for a violation. And my mom ended up showing up at the hotel room at like 5 in the morning. And we had a hotel room. We were paying $120 for this hotel room because it had a room in the front and a room in the back. So we had a baby gate up and we had the room in the back. And we thought we were great parents because we were putting her in the best environment that we could. And, you know, knowing now, it doesn't matter what it was, she shouldn't have been in that environment, you know. We did the best we could, but that wasn't good enough. So anyways, my mom ended up showing up, and, you know, we would say all the drugs in the front room, nobody was allowed in the back room. So when my mom showed up, she walked into a hotel room full of people and drugs, and I was sleeping in the back with the baby. And I remember the baby, all of a sudden somebody's pulling the baby out from under my arms. And I woke up and was like, Mom, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm taking her. I'm taking her. You are not right. This is not okay. And I was like, give me my baby back now. And I was ready to fight my mom over my baby, you know?
Yeah.
And she was like, Kayla, I'm calling the police. If you try and take her back from me, I'm calling the police. Because I had a warrant myself. I would have gone to jail. And she was like, you need to fix this, Kayla. This baby doesn't deserve this. You need to fix this. And so she took the baby, and you know, I ended up getting way worse after that. I mean, that was not, you know, I remember my mom saying, just if it's like a Friday, she's like, give us a clean UA on Monday and I'll give her back. And I never could do that, you know. So, but CPS became involved because when my mom came to get the baby, and it was a scene, and CPS ended up getting involved. So, and my CPS case started back in 2000, the end of 2015. So, and it's just now being closed. Almost 5 years later.
Wow. Really? Why did it tell me? Is it because you were struggling to get sober? Is that why?
Yeah, it was because you know, the case started, and then I took a year of.
Oh yeah.
I didn't contact them for almost. Yeah, I didn't contact them for a year, and it wasn't until they were threatening to terminate my rights that I said, okay, let me go get sober. And then I got sober, or no, wait. Then I found out I was pregnant again.
Mm-hmm.
So I was pregnant again. I went and got sober. Eric went back to prison. I had my second baby, and they let me keep the baby, and because I was in a long-term treatment center for women with kids. And so they let me keep the younger baby, but my older baby was living with my grandma and my aunt. And so we were planning on transitioning her back to me then. So now we're talking, it's been open like 2.5 years at this point. And then I relapsed. Eric gets out of prison again. They take that baby. Now my grandma and aunt have both of the babies, and I'm struggling. I don't talk to them. I think I only see the babies once in a year. And then they were threatening to terminate my rights again. And my termination trial was starting here back in December of 2017, and that's when I went to treatment.
Do you think that because your grandma and your mom had your babies, do you think it made it easier for you to be like, I'm not going to get sober yet. I'm still doing this right now? Because,
you know,
go ahead.
I've gone back and forth with that, because my grandma and my aunt would not budge on the rules for CPS. Like, I know other people whose family members have had their children, and they'll go behind CPS's back and let them see the kids and let them call and do all of that. My family wouldn't do that. And so I've looked back and I've seen that I don't think there was urgency in me getting my kids back, because I know that my kids were safe.
Right.
I remember I used to always go to my, the house they were living in was the same house I grew up going to. My grandma's house, she still lives in it. I knew they were safe and well taken care of, and it just wasn't a priority. And it wasn't until I started realizing that the end is near. They're not playing with me anymore. If I want to get my kids back, it needs to be now.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't until I saw that trial was coming up that I was, but you know what? If I'm being really honest, if I'm being sincerely honest, and I talked about this in treatment, it was so hard for me to admit this and say this out loud to people, but it's my truth. And I did not get sober to get my kids back. I did not get sober because I wanted to get my kids back. That was a thought, but I never thought that was ever going to be possible. I didn't feel worthy enough as a mom. I didn't feel like I even had the potential to do that. But what really pushed me to get sober was because Eric was going to prison, and he wrote me a letter while I was out on the street, and he wrote it to my grandma and said, "Tell Kayla I'm done. I don't want anything to do with her anymore. She's still using. She said she was going to go try and get the kids back." And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to lose him. I can't lose him. I was so codependent, and like I couldn't picture a life without him. So I went to treatment, a long-term treatment center, and I was like, I'm going to get him back, right? Yeah. But when I got there, they told me that the treatment center I was at, we can't talk to people who are incarcerated, right? So I was like, oh man, well, that was the whole reason I came. So I guess I'm gonna get sober for my kids then. That's gonna be my new focus. I'm gonna get sober for them. And I started trying to get sober for them. And CPS told me, we're really happy that you're trying to get sober. We're really proud of you, but it's too late. You're not gonna get your kids back. We're still going to trial. They wouldn't let me see the kids still. It was like, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get my kids back. What's the point of being sober then? And then I was like, I guess I'm going to get sober for myself. I guess I'm just going to get sober for me. And when I finally switched over to getting sober for myself, I got everything back. It was like right when I accepted that, it was like, hold on, Kayla. There's somebody down there. You haven't always been this piece of crap. Like, you used to, I've always tried to be a good person, but it's like my addiction would just take over. So when I decided I wanted to get sober for myself and like find myself again and make my family proud, it was like everything changed. Everything changed for me. And yeah, it was then. And I remember I was in treatment when I came to this conclusion, and I remember telling the group of girls I was sitting with that I was like, because I had been so invested in getting my kids back, and when I went to court and the judge told me like, there's no point in you taking this to trial, Kayla. You really should just sign your rights over and at least sign for an open adoption, and then you'll be able to see your kids for 2 days a year or something. And I was just like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I'm gonna fight. I have to fight to the end. And if I lose, I lose. But at least I fought. So I remember I was with a counselor, this woman named Kira, who I still to this I feel like she saved my life. Sorry, my little sister. I truly feel like this counselor had a lot to do with saving my life. And she was with me at court, and I remember looking at her and being like, when they told me there's no hope, like, you're not going to get the kids back, I remember looking at her and being, because the court was in Tacoma, which is where I used to use that. And I was like, why am I going back to treatment? I'm not getting my kids back. There's no point. And Kira was like, Kayla, there is a point. You're the point. You are. You, everything else doesn't matter. You matter. And I remember being like, I guess I matter. I do. I guess I'm gonna try, you know? And I went back to treatment and everybody was like came up to me and was like, oh my gosh, how did court go? And I didn't want to talk about it. I went to bed and woke up. I had this roommate too who was the complete opposite of me. Like I'm loud and I talk, and she's like introverted, and we were just polar opposites, but we became best friends. And I remember I woke up and I felt like I had got hit by a truck because of the feelings I was feeling, and I never used to feel feelings at all. And that roommate was like, Kayla, it's gonna be okay. Like you're gonna be okay, you know? And yeah, that was like a really huge turning point in my life and my recovery and everything. It's when I realized like I need to do this for myself, and I talked to my group at treatment about it, and I was like, I'm doing this for myself now. And then slowly but surely it was like I went to court and they continued it. Hold on, somebody's knocking on my door.
It's okay. You're okay, girl. How many of you guys are crying right now? I know y'all are. I know y'all are. I'm over here choking back the tears. Y'all know how I am. I'm a crier, so whenever you start crying, I'm gonna start crying too.
Girl, I'm a crier too. My the girls in my treatment used to just because I'm a tough girl too, right? I put on this big old tough face, like nobody's gonna mess with me. And then I start talking about the food, the dinner we had last night, and I'll just cry about everything. But anyways, yeah, it was a huge turning point. And that's why sometimes when I talk to people who are like, you know, new in recovery or early in recovery, and I like to explain to people that it's very important that you find your worth in this. It's very important that you're not doing this for anybody but yourself, because they always used to say those cliche things like, if you put anything above your recovery, that's what you'll lose. And, you know, I used to always roll my eyes to that kind of stuff. But then eventually, when I had it in my own terms and it made sense in my own way, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Because once I switched over to this, I'm getting sober for myself, I ended up, they ended up continuing my trial for CPS. And I went to the transitional house. I graduated treatment. I went to the transitional house, and eventually it was like I had shown that they didn't think I was going to stay sober. And eventually it was like I was in a 6-month inpatient, and I graduated that. And then 3 months after that, they kept continuing it. And I was like, okay, now I've been sober 9 months, and they had let me start seeing my girls again. And that was a whole nother challenge, because it had been so long that my youngest didn't know me, you know? She didn't know me, and she was scared of me. And I was devastated by that. But it just took time. It took a lot of time, a lot of work. But, you know, my girls are attached at the hip with me. I mean, it's almost humorous now that's how we started, because yeah, they're such a big part of my life now. But
a lot of people don't understand that whenever your kids go away from you like that, because when Nathaniel got taken from me, he was about to turn 1. And so I was so emotional that every time I would have visits with him, he could tell. I was crying, I was sobbing, and he didn't want to come to me.
No.
He wanted to go to my husband, because my husband would go in there and be like, ah. And so he was afraid to come to me because I was
and we're
sobbing.
like,
yes. And that it adds a whole nother level of staying sober is even doubly hard, because now I'm thinking, I'm not a good mom. My son doesn't love me. I'm never going to be able to take care of him like somebody else could. Like, I was just totally down on myself, you know, and it adds a whole nother layer to getting and staying clean, because being a mom and being away from your kids, there's nothing worse than being separated from your children because of something that you were doing. You know what I mean? It was the worst thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah. And now it's like, you know, and there was a lot of that with me too, because, you know, where my girls were living was with my grandma and my aunt, you know, and my aunt is a kindergarten teacher and my grandma is my grandma, you know, and she, you know, they have a house and they cook dinner every night and they both drive and can get them to their appointments and get them here and get them there. And me, I'm homeless. I was homeless. Homeless in a transitional house, don't have a license, don't have a car. And I just kept feeling like I'm never going to be enough for them. It's not, I remember wanting to throw in the towel so many times and being like, I'm never going to be able to do it. And I'm not perfect by any means. I'm in a, you know, transitional housing right now. I don't have a car. I don't have a license. I I just have me to give to my kids, but I'm trying, you know, and I'm doing everything I can to provide for them and showing them love and comfort and all of that is what I can do now. And I know in due time life will work itself out, you know. Um I know when I stopped stealing, you know, I kept holding on to stealing because I felt like I needed things and I needed this and I needed that and I got to a point where I felt like it was hindering me in my recovery. And I told myself, okay, I'm not going to steal anymore. And it was right when I moved into this place. I moved from the other transitional house to this place. And I said, I'm not going to steal anymore. I'm just going to, you know, ask family for help and ask for help. And when I moved in, I didn't have beds for my girls, right? I didn't have, and I couldn't, CPS said they couldn't come stay until I got beds for them, right?
Right.
And it was like, it was a sign, I felt like it was a sign from God because I stopped stealing, I moved in, I didn't have beds, and I looked on, I think it was like Craigslist or OfferUp, and a guy was getting rid of a bunk bed to a family in need, right? And I wrote him and I said, hey, I'm a family in need. I would love the bunk bed. And he said, well, me and my wife already got rid of it. So sorry. And then he wrote me again and said, but are you really a family in need? And I said, yeah, I am. And I kind of gave him a little bit of my story. I said, I have two girls. We don't have beds. And he said, listen, me and my wife will spend $1,000 on you and your kids. Pick out a bunk bed, send me the link, and I'll have it shipped to you. And he did.
That
Yeah.
is so awesome.
Yeah, look here, look. It's a mess. Don't mind it.
Oh, girl, you're fine. Damn.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
That's because you're doing the right thing though, Kayla. That's why
Yeah.
things like that are happening because you're
Yeah.
staying sober, you quit stealing,
Yep.
you're living in transitional housing. That's great because that helps you stay accountable, you know?
Yeah. Well, and then the tricky part is this place is transitional living, right? But there are no requirements for people to stay sober.
Mhm.
And when I moved in here and they told me that, I thought like, crap, I don't want to be in an environment that's not clean and sober, but I need housing. CPS was willing to give me my kids back, but I needed a place. Like this is my own apartment, you know. I needed a place, and so I was willing to take anything. And after moving in here, I realized there's a lot more people using than sober, and it's very difficult to live in an environment like this. But I am grateful that I stayed in that transitional place for so long. The transitional house the last one I lived in was across the street from my treatment center. So anybody who graduated that treatment didn't have anywhere to go, couldn't find housing, could stay there. And so I was in a very safe environment for a long time. And so I feel like because I built that foundation of my recovery, living here, it's not fun to be around people who use, but I can be an example for the people who are struggling and show people that it is possible, you know. It's exciting. I looked at my calendar today and next week, a week from today, I'll have 2 years clean. So I'm
so
super
proud
excited.
of you, girl. Like
Thank
I'm
you.
serious. Like your story is so freaking like I can just relate to you on so many different levels on having my son taken, on being out there and doing stuff with dudes and getting caught up with crazy situations like that. And so many women go through the same feelings where we just, it's like we don't feel like you said, we're not worthy. We don't love ourselves. We don't, we just, it sucks because that's all I had to do was start believing in myself and knowing that I can stay sober and I'm going to be a good mother. But changing that internal dialogue in my mind was the hardest thing for me. I held on to this negative thinking for so long, it held me back for so many years.
Right. Yeah. And, another thing I learned from going to treatment and not being able to talk to Eric was that I can survive without, not, I'm grateful and I'm blessed that we're still together to this day. But I
Right.
realized then that I don't need anybody. I can do this life thing myself if I have, which it was so great for him to get out and him to be able to go do his own thing, and I was doing my own thing. And we said to each, because nobody wanted us to be together at that point. CPS didn't want us together. Our families didn't want us together. My counselors, nobody wanted us together because we had such a history together,
Right. Yeah.
So, but we always have had that love. I mean, that love never went anywhere. So I remember him getting out. In the past, we would have dropped everything to come see each other.
Hmm.
But I had a curfew. He was with his family. We didn't see each other for like a day or two. And we told each other then, like, I love you. I want you to do well, but we have to stay separate for a little while and at least get on our feet separately before we can try and convince everybody to let us be together,
Right.
and
That's
that's
the
what we
best
did.
thing you could have ever done. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, because me and my husband, we were both in active addiction together also.
Yeah.
And getting together and staying together at the beginning of our recovery, it was very difficult, and he didn't succeed. He relapsed, a lot. Well, about 4 times. And by the grace of God, I didn't go out and relapse with him, but it made it that much more difficult on me to stay sober. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and which we've been, both of us. I mean, Eric has over 2 years. He got sober before me because he went to prison, and I continued to use for a few months. And so we both have been very, just we got established on our own, and we still don't live together.
Yeah.
And eventually that will come. It's not because we can't live together, but it's just because he ended up getting a great job in Tacoma, and he lives in Tacoma. He lives in an Oxford house,
Hmm.
and so he stayed at his Oxford house, so he can get to work, and then he'll come on the weekends, and I stay like 30 minutes away or so from where he does, and so we've been able to establish ourselves, and I'm just, everything has fallen into place that has needed to fall into place, and so it's a huge deal to me. I'm beyond excited to have this much time clean, but I don't forget those first few days. I don't forget before I got sober, and that's a lot of the reason when I went on that last interview, I had been talking to Eric about wanting to start a channel. After I saw your channel, I was like, she's doing so much for recovery. I would love to do that. I would love to do that. I have so much experience in addiction, and I was going to meetings when I was up at my other transitional house. Now I kind of live in the middle of nowhere and I don't drive, so it's harder for me to get to meetings. And then when I found your channel, I feel like I go to a meeting. Every time I watch your channel, I feel like I'm in a meeting. It's great. So I was like, gosh, I would love to do that. That would be, I just feel like I could help a lot of people. I see what you're doing, and I think it's great what you're doing, and I'm proud of you. I know I've only known you for a little while, but I've heard your story, and I'm proud of you. You're helping a lot of people, and you've came a long way too. And I just think that it's crazy how the world is now, that we can reach people who we don't know, like
Yeah.
I grew up in the 90s, we didn't really do all of that. I mean, the 90s sounds like so long time ago, but it's cool to be able to just talk to people who you can relate to, and be so far away from them and be able to give your own experience, strength, and hope. So,
girl, I love it. And going on Josh's channel was such a big opportunity. And for me, and I know it was a big opportunity for you and your husband. And it's like to be able to come on there and tell our stories about what it was like when we were out in our crazy lives and now that we're living our lives right. And it gives me chills hearing you be like, I saw you on his channel and then I came to your channel and I feel like feels like I go to a meeting when I come here because that's exactly how I feel. I feel like I can come on here and I can talk to everybody about what I'm going through. And if I'm at home with my son and I can't get out to go to a meeting or I'm just having a bad day, I can come on here and share with everybody on here and we have a damn meeting, you know what I mean?
right,
And it's like we're having a speaker meeting right now, you know?
right.
It's so freaking cool. And like you said, I was born in 82, so I grew up, in the 90s, and I don't ever remember being able to do anything like this. And if I was doing it, I was high as hell. So,
Right. Right. With
you
like
know,
antennas on talking to people in outer space or something. But yeah, I'm new to the YouTube thing, and so I'm still trying to figure out, do you have to have a certain amount of people or subscribers to do live streams?
yeah, you have to have 1,000 subscribers to do a live stream, but you can download like these different applications on your phone or wherever you're going live from, and you can
Mm-hmm.
go live through that application. So that I'll help you out with that because my
Okay.
friend Jeff, he goes live and he doesn't have 1,000 subscribers yet. So
Oh,
that way you can start planning your live streams, and I'll help you with whatever you need help with to get your channel, up and running the way you want it to run. But
right, because when I went on Dad's channel, I didn't have a YouTube yet. I had been thinking about it, and then I was like, okay. I figured. I remember I sent you the name. I was like, do you think this is cool?
I love it.
And yeah, and then that's when I started. So I don't know if I mean, it's hard because sometimes like my family has watched that interview, and
Mhm.
I know his message and where he's coming from, but an outsider looking in, it just looked like, I don't know, they weren't as excited for me as I think my family would be to see me on your channel, because there's a message that we're talking, or there's a point to what we're talking about. Not to say that it wasn't like that in the other one. I just don't think that they understood.
Yeah, I know. I
You know.
understand what you're saying.
Okay,
Like,
yeah.
you need to go back and tell him that you made a channel so he can link your channel below that
I
video.
did. He
Okay.
did. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, he did. And but yeah, I mean, this whole thing has been fun for me, and I've gone on my channel and I've tried just different things, and I've gotten good reactions. That for me, it's been like a challenge to try and figure out how to tell stories but not seem like I'm glorifying things, because a lot of it is crazy,
Right.
and but I'm trying my best to have a message or show the point to the story is
I
recovery.
think that if you start out at the beginning and you let people know, because I always tell everybody, like these stories are stories I did when I was out there in my addiction. I'm not proud of it, but it's what it is. And I'm sharing this with you so that way maybe you won't make the same mistakes I did. Or if you have, you can relate and you can see that, look, I've came out on the other side of this and so
Right.
can you, and just always try to bring it back around to recovery at the end. At least that's what I try to do, because
Yeah.
there are a lot of channels out where people it's like war stories and them thinking it's cool to be. It's not cool. It's not cool to be on drugs. It's not cool to be a gangbanger. It's not cool to go to prison. It's cool being a mom, getting a job, taking care of your kids, being with your family. That's what's cool.
Yep.
you know
Yep.
so anyway, I'm so happy that you came on. I want to have you on again so that way we can talk about like what you're doing now to stay sober and everything. So we'll
Cool.
plan another day for you to come on. But I love you, girl. We linked your channel. Everybody, your friend Amy is here, just so you know.
Oh,
Yeah. She says, we
I
like
love
to hear
her.
about a solution, and I love this. So yeah, you got people in here that are here to support you. So I
Oh,
will let you go because I don't want to hold you hostage. I'll keep you on here all night. But I'm going to put this video up. I want you to send a picture of me so I can use it for the thumbnail, and then we'll schedule another day for you to come on, okay?
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
All right, girl. Talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
All right, you guys, that was Miss Kayla. Damn, she is a miracle. She is a miracle. The fact that she is alive to tell her stories, and man, it touches my heart, you guys. I can really relate to what she went through in her addiction down to a T, down to having the husband and doing the things with the men like that. She was telling my story to me. So I really hope you guys will go over and subscribe to her channel. Her channel is Street Life to Housewife. It's linked in the description, and I'm going to link it when I upload this video. You guys go show her some love. Drop her some comments. Let her know what you want to hear from her. Tell her, leave her some ideas so that way we can get her up there, and let's get her to 1,000 subscribers. Okay, you guys? All right. I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Y'all are always bomb and show out. So thanks so much, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.